Hello, and welcome to Darwinism, a show where we explore Darwin's experience on the HMS Beagle. On this week's episode, we landed in Rio de Janeiro, a city off the coast of Brazil.
After having been at sea for almost 4 months, Darwin and his crew descended the Beagle on April 5, 1832, to begin their journey in Rio de Janeiro.
Unfortunately, just after their arrival, Darwin received a notice that his dearest companion, Fanny Owen, who shared a love for nature just as he did, had been engaged to a politician by the name of Robert Biddulph less than a couple of weeks after Darwin's departure. What a perfect way to start an expedition. At this point, the young naturalist was more than destroyed, but eventually decided to focus his energy on more important things, exploring the wondrous land of Rio.
His crew decided to have him and a couple other men explore the land for 3 months, while the rest continued to conduct marine surveys. Rio de Janeiro is a city full of exotic species. Obviously, that was enough to convince Darwin, the nature fanatic, to resist the hot climate there.
As they made their way into the city, they noticed how intensely crowded the streets were. Darwin was also surprised by how immorally the citizens treated their black slaves and was forever scarred by their actions.
Their first mission as a crew was to find a suitable area for temporary lodging, which they found very quickly with the help of Augustus Earle, their ship's artist. Earle, being quite familiar with the surrounding area, also helped Darwin around the city.
He guided Darwin to numerous places where he began his research, one of which including Gavia, a topsoil mountain.
After arriving, he was pleased to encounter a couple of Strongylus beetles, but what was strange about these organisms was that they were fond of the odious smell a fungus called Hymenophalus exerted and abided closely to it.
His observation reminded him of another beetle and fungus species in England that had similar traits. Although these species were geographically distant and weren't from the same direct family, they carried parallel adaptations.
This helped Darwin understand that species adapted according to the conditions provided to them in their environment and hadn't simply inherited characteristics native to that region.
After finding such interesting connections, Darwin was off to investigate yet another area in Rio, Botafogo Bay. Here he found several organisms of the species Planaria. These animals were very simple in structure. They could almost be described as slug-like organisms.
What Darwin found the most fascinating was the difference in physical characteristics between the same species in that region. A certain number of these planaria lived under salt water and had outer tissues that resisted the high salt level.
There was also planaria that lived in rather dry areas, usually on tree bark, and had softer skin. The intriguing part of this contrast of traits to Darwin was that these animals were from the same species and region. Darwin's only logical explanation of these differences would be their adaptation to local environment. This concept was later used in his theory.
To sum everything up, Darwin made 2 important observations during his visit to Rio de Janeiro. These include that closely related species can be different, and also that distantly related species can be similar.
That's it for this week's episode on Darwinism. Be sure to stay tuned.